Hey everybody, my name is Dan Beldowitz, Director of Business Development here at CMA. Welcome to CMA's July webinar, Virtual Success, How Remote Brands or How Remote Events Build Brands. Today what we're going to be going through is webinars, virtual trainings, live social media events, video marketing, and of course virtual events and conferences. All of this surrounds the same type of things, and as we know, the world has been completely turned upside down. Everything has been flipped on its head and is completely different. And if you're looking at the world of trade shows and B2B marketing and getting out there, everything has been totally flipped. And here's what I'm talking about. This is Google Trends, and it's a fantastic tool. If you ever want to use it, it's google.com/trends. And basically what it does is it leverages all of the different search phrases and technology that Google has, which is incredible, and basically counts the number of searches that are happening every single day. And what I compared here is virtual event, virtual conference, and trade show. And you can see since COVID hit, and we know how devastating all of this has been, but how much business impact has kind of come from it. You see trade shows took a nosedive and everyone started searching for virtual events and virtual conferences because that's all you could do is be online. In this social distancing thing, you were no longer could get out there, right? You have to do temperature checks anywhere that you go. You're elbow bumping people. You're wearing face masks. Business has been completely tossed and turned due to social distancing, CDC guidelines, and everything else that goes into actually taking care of yourselves and protecting everyone else from this crazy thing. So when this happened, trade shows took a nosedive. And CMA's businesses, we do a marketing side, and we also do associations. So a lot of our associations have events, annual conferences, and things like that. So that got totally flipped upside down for us as well. So one of the things that we have to now cope with is this new normal. Now, I know the faux pas of saying new normal. You're not supposed to say new normal, but ultimately, every day is a new normal. I've always been a fan of change is constant, and you always have to continuously evolve. And this new normal is just that. It's just normal. This is just how things go. So it's not like this is futuristic. It's not like all of a sudden this is a new thing. Webinars have been around for a long time. Virtual conferences, and if anybody remembers the Second Life phase where millions of people were just online in this virtual world and people were exchanging real money for digital assets. And it was kind of crazy at the time, but it was a sign of things changing. And that's the key in business, is to continuously grow and adapt so that your business stays relevant, that you stay in front of the right people at the right time with the right message, and you leverage the tools that you have so that you can keep up with the normal. New normal will never go away. Everybody will constantly say they're tired of hearing new normal. Ultimately, every day is new change. So we need to continuously grow and adapt our businesses so that we stay relevant to our clients and our customers, and ultimately continuously grow our businesses. So let's first talk about webinars. Everybody knows, let's not assume everybody knows what a webinar is. A webinar is a great way to engage and really gain leads and attract your audience. You're all on a webinar right now. And there's a couple of different ways to do webinars. You can do it like this, where I'm on screen as well as I'm sharing my screen, and you can see what's happening. It's a good way to present information and give people something to look at the same time. You can also just do it as a panel so that there's multiple people on screen, more like a news interview where you have multiple people on screen at the same time. You have a moderator asking questions and guiding the conversation so that you can get to the point that you want. So I'm going to go through a couple of different things on webinars in all the different virtual solutions that we're talking about today. But let's hit the stats, right? So 58% of marketers use webinars as a promotional tool. 73% of B2B marketers see webinars as an effective way of generating high quality leads. And it's crucial. Right? You can get as much traffic, and traffic has never been a good thing. I live in Jersey, actually live down by the Jersey Shore. Not to admit that the Jersey Shore, but that show completely killed the term Jersey Shore for all of us here in Jersey. But traffic's never been a good thing. So it's not about just generating traffic to your website or traffic to a landing page, but it is about creating high quality leads, people that should know who you are, what you do, and be able to buy and afford your services or your products. Ultimately, at the end of a webinar, between 2 and 5% eventually make a purchase at the end of the webinar, or there's a follow-up series and it becomes the entranceway for you to actually generate those leads, for them to get to know, like, and trust you, and ultimately turn those into a client. So as we move on, we definitely see that there's a 5-part process to creating a powerful webinar that generates leads for you. And it's the 5 Ps. It's prepare, promote, power, present, and poll. So in preparation, it's really about developing the topics, right? What are you going to be talking about? Ultimately, understanding what is the flow of the presentation. How do you get into it, and how do you ensure that your audience is getting something out of it, right? Your audience is coming to learn something. They're coming to be entertained, to learn, and to grow from your presentation. And that's all in the preparation. You want to make sure that your presentation materials, your topics, developing this stuff in Keynote or in PowerPoint are key, making sure that you're using visuals and not just stacking slides with text, so that they're getting a great experience out of this. So much of it comes down to the preparation. Ultimately, what you need is the promotion side of it. How you get the word out there, how you get people onto it, right? It doesn't matter if you have the best webinar in the world, if you have the best content, if you have the most influential information that would change somebody's life, grow somebody's business. It doesn't matter if you don't get it out there. So promoting your webinar is key in being able to drive as many people to it as possible, so that it's a one-to-many process of, saying, hey, this is what we have to offer and here's how we do it. Ultimately, you want to put it out on your website, put it out through your email list. And that's why growing an email list is so crucial today, is because email is still the #1 business communication tool that there is. Put this stuff out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Google+. Google+ is gone the way of the dodo, but it still shows up in all the social media icon packs. So that's why that's still there. But leveraging all the different social media channels to distribute what you have going on and where things are going. So make sure that you're promoting this to all the proper channels. And it's not just promoting it once. This has to go out there time and time again, especially as you lead up to the webinar. Because, with Twitter, like a tweet on Twitter will only last like 3 seconds. So the size of the social media universe is one that where your audience isn't seeing every single post you put out there. So promoting it multiple times on social media is key. Promoting it multiple times through email is key. The more times that you can get it out there in a way that serves your audience is going to be better. And obviously having it on your website really is the center of your marketing universe, and that's where you want to drive people. And people are going to be coming through there and seeing this information, and this is probably the best lead generators for somebody to hop on a webinar, to understand who you are, to get to hear you, to get to know you, like you, and trust you. So the promotion side of it is key to actually generating the sales and the things that you need on the back end of the webinar. Then we move into power. How are you actually going to present this? Our favorite, obviously, right now you're on Zoom. But we also use Cisco's WebEx system, which is an older platform. Their pricing has actually come down quite a bit, so it's actually very competitive, and we actually use for some of our clients. There's also GoToWebinar, Webinar Jam, and a few other key services that allow you to present like this. But these are your top 3. We primarily stick with Zoom and Cisco's WebEx. This way we can, have the maximum number of attendees, provide the recordings. It allows for submission of questions. We can have polls throughout the webinar. We can have different surveys that we do through it. It's more secure, and that was a big thing in the news as Zoom exploded from, I think it was 2.1 million users to over 10 million users. It's some crazy numbers, or 100 million. Zoom had some security issues, but they have since tightened those things up, which really makes it key, because one of Zoom's really cool features is when you get to certain levels, you can have different breakout rooms. So it's great for networking events in different places where you can have attendees go to interact with each other. And that's where user experience, that's where the networking, the talking, the kind of audience interaction really happens. Obviously, recording all of these different webinars is one of the best ways that you can go, because you're always going to want to either share the recording or go back to it as things go. Casey, so just hopping in, I just saw in the chat, virtual conferencing software. I'll talk about a few of those, yes, at the end, once we get to the virtual conferences section. So yeah, hang in there. That is probably one of the last ones we get to. Next piece to this is present, right? Presenting is key, right? This is the show. Ultimately, you spend all this time prepping for it. You do all the preparations. You do the promotions for it. And it's like any other Broadway show or, theater where it's like, hey, you do all this prep for it and it is over in an hour. So the presenting side of it, a couple of key things that you need to think through, right? Audience participation and how you let people in. It was interesting to watch as COVID happened and Zoom made their updates to security. They put all of the people who were attending the webinar or attending the meeting into a waiting room. And then all of a sudden the moderator or the host would have to let people in. And for the first few weeks, people were confused by it. They're like, well, where do I let people in? How do I do this? I didn't know. So making sure that you have a good understanding of the software itself is key. Otherwise, it's best to have somebody else handle the technology side of it. So moderating, always starting your webinars with kind of the ground rules, like I did in the beginning, where I'm at least stating expectations on, use the chat. Is the technology working? If you have questions, I'll answer it along the way, or you'll answer them all at the end. This way that your audience knows what to expect, when to expect it, and how to expect it. Ultimately, you want to be able to record the entire session and have it for archived playback. And this is something that it's either for the audience or it's for your own personal use for either training purposes or archival purposes, so you can go back and see what it all is. You'll also be, and while you're presenting, different things come up. There's different technology pieces that happen. I've constantly always had somebody on larger webinars where somebody's like, oh, I can't hear you, or it's this, it's that. A lot of times it's user error. A lot of times it's maybe their internet connection, but somebody's always asking, is this working? Maybe my internet connection goes out for a little bit. So there's a lot of different things as you start to kind of fly through these webinars in controlling it, making sure that, you're going through the different PowerPoints or the presentation or the keynote, making sure that you're speaking on time. And then ultimately delivering that list of participants, because that list is really where your lead generation efforts begin. The follow-up on it, what you do after that, and how you kind of deliver on the promise of the webinar and what happens afterwards. So it's always, having somebody on hand to kind of scan and see what questions are coming up, what's going on in the chat. And a lot of times it's easier if you're not doing it as the presenter, but you have somebody kind of either co-hosting with you or you have a moderator with you, which is a fantastic way to go when you don't want to have to worry about the tech and the kind of moderation of the comments, the chat, the questions, and how everything kind of comes together. So there's a lot going on when you're presenting. You got one screen that I'm sharing with y'all in what you see, and on this other screen I've got the Zoom software up. I've got the PowerPoint going and seeing all the different slides and what's happening there. And finally, what do you do after it, right? So a participant survey, just polling your audience afterwards. What did they get out of it? Is it did they get everything out of it? Can you get a testimonial for it? Do they have questions about it? Did it spark information? Did it really spark some ideas for them? In understanding, how do you make your presentations better? That's really the goal of this. And I see a lot of people who come out and say that they need to do a different presentation all the time. What I've found most effective is doing the same presentation multiple times to different audiences, so they can really hone in and understand, what's happening, what's going on. And I used to do this when I spoke on stage. Was I always recorded myself. I would have a video camera in the back of the room. It didn't matter if I was at a Chamber of Commerce event, an industry event, big on stage where they already had cameras on me. I wanted my own kind of viewpoint of what I was doing. What are my hand gestures like? How am I coming across? What's my energy like? How did I work the room? What was my eye contact? I did it, and everybody asked, like, what are you doing? Like, why do you record yourself? You know this stuff. I'm like, I know it, but I want to see what is the audience, what are they responding to? How are they reacting? What actually captured their information or attention? You know, are they nodding through all this, right? So does this make sense? Like making sure that you're getting your audience engaged and understanding that it's easier when you can poll and you actually do the same webinar multiple times so that you understand how it comes across to your audience. So polling your audience is key. You know, what works, what didn't work, and what people got out of it, and what people would change. What else would they want? It's one of the most effective feedback loops you'll have is through a webinar and being able to survey them afterwards to say, hey, what worked, what didn't work, and what else would you want to learn? Ultimately, one of the cool things is we did this for Amerlux. Amerlux is a, you know, it's a lighting manufacturer. They make LED lights. It's high-end stuff. It's not commercial grade where you can just buy this stuff in Home Depot or anything like that. It's architectural spec grade, which means they have to be specified by either an architect, a lighting designer, or an engineer to be put into buildings in redevelopment projects and things like that, which makes it a little bit difficult to market, because how do you get in front of those guys when it's not project-based? It's really about how do you get in front of somebody to influence it so that they know why they should be specifying it when they have a project come up that requires that. And one of the things that we did for them was actually created a webinar series, and we called it Illumination, Learning in the Best Light. And Amerlux's previous tagline was Be Seen in the Best Light, and it was all about how light impacts the environment and everything else that's in it. So we did 8 webinars, and ultimately, you know, you think 8 webinars, well, that's a lot of content to create, but here's what we did. We did 4 webinars, and then we did encores of those. So we took those 4 webinars, we recorded them, and then we replayed them a few months later. So you were putting it back out there, leveraging the content. So we didn't have to completely redo them. And this, again, makes it way easier on developing content side. And CMA helped them out. We wrote the webinars, we promoted the webinars, we did all of the, you know, the 5 Ps for them. All they had to do was show up and present. And we were still on with them while they were doing that. And basically what this was, architects, lighting designers, and engineers could actually earn continuing education credits through the AIA, which is the Architectural Institute or Association of, I think it's the Architectural Institute Association, something like that. Yes, American Institute of Architects. Thank you. But they could earn continuing education credits, and that's a fantastic way to go and a good hook to get people in. So ultimately what this did for them, and this is so cool, they got 1,605 leads from it, 495 registrations, and 275 people actually attended to get their continuing education credits. Now, that's fantastic. When you're talking about a B2B service and it's really, you're not targeting consumers, this is a lot harder audience to reach. So if you're wondering if this is actually going to work for your business, trust me, this is one of the harder audiences to actually get in front of and to actually get them to do. So if you're wondering how this actually happened, look, we were able to get in front of, you know, over 1,600 leads from this so that we can email them and follow up as they do other things for it. We had close to 500 people registered, and attendance rate was around 56%, which is a decent percentage when people are doing live events like this. A lot of times, you know, I typically calculate around 50% of people who have actually registered are actually going to show up on the webinar. And that's just something to keep in mind as you go out and do these events, what attendance is going to actually be like. It's not like live events where, hey, they bought a ticket or they said they're going to go and they go. Digital and virtual stuff it's a little bit different, but as long as you're setting your expectations right, and for most webinars, you should be around that 50% attendance rate. If you're getting higher, fantastic. It means your marketing and your messaging is probably doing better for you. But these are great numbers. You know, if you can imagine what it would be like if you had an extra 275 warm, qualified leads that have already heard your pitch, heard your story, seen your products, you know, what would that do for your company? Right? Think about that. Another 275 prospects for you that have already heard your pitch, and now we're, okay, so what's next? Just waiting for you to say, hey, here's how you can specify our products. I think it would be fantastic for your business as well. Next, let's move on to virtual training. Right, so virtual training, any training that's done in person ultimately can be done online, right? There's a way to do it. It's not future anymore. This is current, right? I mean, we're just at the point where video is fast enough. We've got enough connections. There's enough competition out there. There's enough ways to actually engage. And honestly, I mean, it happens inside our pockets, right? Our mobile phones and things like that. There are computers where we can all just hop on whenever, wherever, without any kind of technology gaps, without a big barrier to entry. And it doesn't cost millions of dollars to get started. But the cool parts about this, right, is e-learning increase in retention rates from 25 to 60%, right? So for all those that are going crazy, whether their kids are going to be home in learning online, or if they're going to be going back to school, or if it's a hybrid model of A and B days or A and B weeks or half days, and then you come home and continue learning. I know it is absolutely crazy right now, but ultimately what the stats are telling us is that e-learning actually increases retention rates by 25 to 60%. And then it comes down to who's actually on screen and the information that's being presented and how that happens. And we can get into a couple of the different things on the virtual training side, like the testing, the assessments, and how all of that works. So another cool stat was that participants learn nearly 5 times more material without increasing time spent on training, right? And that goes to the retention rates, right? So if they can remember more in the same amount of time without having to go back and review stuff, ultimately, you're going to almost be smarter, faster, better, stronger, in a shorter amount of time than you would had it been done in person. And that comes down to the environment that they're learning in and how things are coming across. So the way that we do this, and we have a couple of clients doing it right now, is the preparation portal, training delivery, session moderation, training, testing, and certification. And there's a couple of different ways that we do this. But the preparation is always where it starts, right? You begin with the right plan, and planning is, the largest part of this, right? Failing to plan is planning to fail is, I think, one of the, the sayings. So it goes into the preparation is picking the topics, creating the materials, and the imagery for it, and making sure that that is impactful, really understanding what are you getting across, how are you doing it, the whys behind it is a lot that goes into the marketing piece of it, and then ultimately how you deliver that and what comes across through it. So once you prep, right, we build out a portal, right, because virtual training is about somebody else being able to go in and take this. So building out a secure portal where people can't get it, and this is actually one of our clients, Pimly and Pimly. I'll talk a little bit more about them in a minute, but this is based on their website. You can log in with your own username and password. This way you know who's logging in, and it's a great way to start kind of tracking and understanding who's doing the work, who's not doing the work, other than just looking at the assessment side of it. You have different programs that we can say, this person is 65% done with module 1, module 2, they're 20% done. And you can start to understand learning environments and how people go through this stuff and the best ways to really engage your audience and get them going. Ultimately, what you want to look at is, how do you leverage these things so that you don't have to keep doing them? So I know there's a lot of different trainings that are already out there. They built out learning portals. There's learning management systems. And these are all great tools for you to truly start building your own learning libraries where you don't have to present the same information over and over again, especially on onboarding new employees or training classes and certifications. Virtual training is a great way to go because it breaks down all geographic barriers as well as time barriers, right? So if you're around the world like Pimly and Pimly, being able to present information at a specific time or a specific time zone was very difficult, right? So when we first started it, we were doing sessions in the middle of the night because we were working in Singapore and in different countries in completely the opposite side of the world. So it's a 12-hour time difference. But as we go, there's different ways to do it, right? We can do it live like we did for the first a couple of weeks. And it was basically us being up at 11 o'clock at night and running this for 4 hours for each session, getting back on at 5:30 in the morning for the next shift. and then being able to record these, and we'll start building out a virtual training platform so that they have all of these sessions already in place. And certain times you're going to have to do it live. There's a lot of continuing education credits that require a live component, a live Q&A. So it's really understanding how that happens and what are the certification processes and requirements of live training versus recorded. And then you can also do the recorded side of it. If there are no requirements for live is just a great way to get some interaction. Recorded are a great way to put your information online in a secure portal where people can access it and then be able to test and do assessments based on that and get their understanding throughout any time, where they can take it anytime, any place, and on any device. So virtual training, the session moderation really goes along with the live piece of it. So if you're doing these live, again, you're going to have to, most people, most times, like teachers, I know my wife is a teacher, she teaches 6th grade math. Handling the kids while building out the presentation and delivering this is something that she had to learn real fast. Many corporations and businesses, they don't want their teachers or their coaches, their professionals to have to worry about the technology. They don't have to worry about the audience or the recordings or the Q&A in moderating all this stuff. So having a session moderator is a fantastic way to go to take care of all those things for you. So having the moderator, set the ground rules, handle the Q&A, making sure that everybody's on time in moving things forward. They'll handle the sending out of the poll afterwards. Handling the PowerPoint presentation as you go through it. It just makes things much smoother and allows the trainer, the teacher, the coach, the professional to handle their side of it. Do what they do best and manage the rest, and that's what the moderator's there for. Finally, online testing, the testing and certification piece of this. It's now very simple for us to build out online quizzing, online assessments, so that you can prove you've actually watched it. And that was one of the biggest things when online training first came about was, well, how do I know that they're actually engaged? Right? People have multiple monitors now, and you can have different screens up. You could have, and I've seen a lot of people do it, have a webinar up on one screen. They have it in their ears, but they're looking at their other screen, checking their email, checking their fantasy sports, their Facebook, their Instagram, their WhatsApp, and Snapchat, and all these other things. Ultimately, now we have engagement tools where we can see, is this the top window? Are they actually engaged? Are they watching the right video, the right screen to know whether you're engaged or not? We haven't gotten to the point where we're leveraging cameras and actually spying into people's eyes and seeing what they're looking at. But that's probably coming. It can't be that far away. I'm sure at some point, we'll be doing that. But building out these assessments, based on the evaluations provided by the organization, and saying, hey, what are the questions and the tests to really effectively assess whether people understand the information, retain it, and build it in. And you can have it so that they can't go back to certain things, or you can have reference materials so that they can go back and find things. There's lots of different options to building these online tests. And it's fantastic for associations that have certification processes and continuing education credits, because you can build these things online, where so many associations, organizations in different things leverage online tests where it's a manual. Hey, send this in, here's the PDF, you do it, you send it in, we'll grade it, and then we send you your results back. Take this stuff online, make it easier. It's much easier to grade. It retains everything. It builds out your customer relationship management system, your CRM, so that you know who did what they did, and it's a seamless system to be able to go back to them and provide a comprehensive understanding of what people understand, what they don't understand. You can use that information. That's one of the best parts, is it collects data around what questions are hard, what's not, and where things need to be tweaked. And that's one of the best parts about being digital and virtual, is the data that you get from it and what you can do from there. It just comes down to how creative you are with the information that you have. So quick, just tell you a little bit about Pimly and Pimly. They are a New Jersey-based company. and they basically provide corporate credit training for the banking sector in more than 40 countries. So when COVID hit and travel was shut down, right? Travel started getting restricted to Europe, to China, to different places, and then ultimately was completely shut down. That's their whole business, is just traveling, training, getting paid, and coming home. When that shuts down, your entire business shuts down. So they had to quickly figure out how to, turn this around. And being able to handle that for them, we basically said, okay, here's what we can do. So what we did was ultimately our 5-step planning process. We prepared materials, we built them a portal, we helped them with the presentation, we powered it, and we did the online certifications, and this allowed them to do their trainings straight from their home, and they could work on screen. Didn't matter where they were, the trainings were taking place, and they had ultimately different businesses all over in Singapore taking their trainings. And it provided a seamless online presentation, and we did this for 3 weeks, and it was 4-hour sessions over a 5-day period, so it was all week long. And we just kept cranking through and created a secure web-based portal for them to interact, where they got all the different materials that they needed. They could get their handouts, they could get the PowerPoints, they could have access to the next training session, the links, the passwords to get in, so that it was very secure. And ultimately the instructor would hop on. We had the moderator leveraging, we did it on WebEx, so that they would handle the PowerPoint for it and the WebEx information. The presenter only had to worry about presenting the information. Moderator took care of the chats, took care of all the other technical challenges that the attendees may have had. And ultimately what ended up happening was this worked so well that they're going to keep rolling these out. Ultimately, at the end, we built out the online assessments and heard that remote seminar sessions were the best training services that they've ever experienced. And that's why that will continue. It comes down to how creative you are with your business and the assessments, the training, and what you're going to do with it. Because there are different ways to monetize this, whether you do it as a consultant, whether you're doing it like Pimly did, in providing educational services to, it doesn't matter who you are or where you are, anywhere in the world. Now you have a monetization model where you can be anywhere and ultimately get paid just to teach and be 100% virtual. Next, we're looking at live on-air social media events. So a lot of people have seen these, it's Facebook Live, YouTube Live, LinkedIn Live, which many people didn't know LinkedIn actually had a live service. But they do, and it's interesting because it's an approval process. So LinkedIn Live, it's an application process where you actually have to go through. You can post, regular videos now, but in order to go live, it's an application process. But you'll see if you're in social media, you'll actually get messages and dings and buzzing, blinking, and beeping and all this other stuff, letting you know that someone has gone live. And what does that mean? It just means that they have hit the live button on their phone or on their computer inside of the social media platform, and ultimately, hey, they're doing a video. That's what this all comes down to, is how video is completely, changing the way that we do things, the way that we think, act and speak and learn, and do commerce. Ultimately, what we're seeing is that 82%, by the end of 2020, live streaming is expected to account for 82% of all internet traffic, which is just insane. That's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of people online doing a lot of different things, and they think that live streaming is going to be one of the top, live streaming is going to be one of the top consumers of all internet traffic. That means that's what people are doing. That's what people are going on for. They're watching it, they're consuming it, or they're providing it. So you can either be a producer or a consumer of this information. The producers are more than likely the ones that are getting paid. The consumers are obviously the ones sitting on the sideline, either learning from or starting to emulate or getting entertained in education from those different live streams. We also see that 67% of audiences who watch the live stream event will actually purchase a ticket to a similar event. So if you are putting on, what we'll talk about next is virtual events and conferences. Actually, that's in a couple minutes away. Virtual events and conferences, live streaming on your social media channels is one of the fastest ways to actually get engagement, as well as sell tickets to your event coming up, because you can kind of splinter down the content that you have or those that are going to be speaking at your event or conference and start building micro marketing campaigns for those and help build up ticket sales for your event and conference, which is a fantastic way to actually start marketing your event or conference. All of these things ultimately can lead up to an event or conference. There's different ways to leverage all these different ideas and how you're getting out there to drive people to your event or conference is really where your big money maker is going to be. But all these small things can add up to it. So a quick case study on this, APSNA, APSNA, the American Pediatric Surgical Nurses Association, something very, very specific. They really wanted to quickly share COVID-19 developments with their audience. And they knew that their audience was primarily, obviously, nurses, and they are surgical nurses, and it's specific to pediatrics. So very, very niche. Having them on Facebook, what we did was we actually helped them put on a Facebook Live. So we identified Facebook as Live as the feature, the ideal way to reach their largest audience on a national scope. And it was just quick and easy. Rather than sending out a Zoom or a webinar or something like this, we knew nurses were on social media, specifically on Facebook, because we knew from the interaction that we were deriving from their social media campaigns that we were already running that a social media or a Facebook Live would be a fantastic way for them to go. Ultimately, what happened, it was a one-day virtual event that helped deepen engagement with members, and we provided a forum for them to connect in a genuine way. So you see what's going on. You can see the members. You can interact, and you can see live comments, what's happening. Ultimately, we reached 4,000. We had 232 people click on it, 87 reactions to it, and that could be a like, a heart, whatever, those different kinds of emojis. But we had 20 live comments come through, and ultimately what's cool is it also still lives on the page so people can go back and see it. And this was a great way for them to kind of provide that transparent, authentic feel and really be who they are and get their message out in a quick way that's able to spread. As people start to like, comment, and share on this thing, that audience grows. So as the Facebook Live goes on, your audience grows and you continue to get more viewers. Fantastic way, and especially if you're having an event, it's a great way to get more engagement, to splinter some content. Doesn't have to be very long. It's not like half hour. It's not an hour-long type of thing. Facebook Lives are typically, what we're finding is engagement, in terms of engagement as well as audience attention span, couple minutes, 1 to 5 minutes max, and that's where you're going with a lot of them. The longer ones, you'll start to see you start to kind of record that content and turn that in. I have seen ones that are an hour long that produce great results, but that's really focused on specific niches and business building opportunities as well as educational opportunities. So there's no right or wrong. That's what's crazy about this is there's no one way to do it. It's ultimately based on the person that's presenting, how engaging they are, how they draw your audience in, the hooks that they set, and what actually comes out of it. Next, we have up promotional video. Now this one's interesting because it's kind of just thrown in, but it's really the backbone of all of this. Video has been skyrocketing ever since YouTube came around. YouTube was bought out by Google for, I think, $1.65 billion, which was insane for the couple of founders of YouTube itself. But promotional video, it serves as a medium to present, how-to tutorials, customer promotion testimonials, live stream events. It's the backbone for webinars, for virtual conferences, for trainings. It's really the backbone for all of this. And being able to download and have internet speeds that are sufficient for decent video has really driven the rise of video. A lot of people are walking around and you have a video broadcasting station inside your pocket with the cell phone that you carry. right? You can get on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, or LinkedIn Live, and instantly broadcast what's going on. It's no longer having to record something. You are now the citizen reporters of everything that's going on. And for business purposes, it's a great way to promote, advertise, and have the personnel and personalities of that personnel, say that 5 times fast, but it really gets your team involved. Because ultimately, as humans, we interact with humans. Yes, branding is fantastic, but ultimately people buy from people. And people buy from people that they know, like, and trust. And the fastest way to do that is through video. Ultimately, you can see who I am. You can see if I'm genuine. There's a lot to be said about the emotions and the expressions that come through, because you get to know that person. You get to like that person. If you get to resonate with their energy and see what that's all about. And it's a great way to do that, whether it's promotional video, and it's not just commercials. It's just how do you interact and how do you provide information, education, and get somebody to know, like, and trust you and your brand. So here's what we find is viewers retain 95% of a message when they watch it in a video, compared to 10% while reading it in text, which is why it's fantastic. If you have a blog, then it is a fantastic idea to actually have those as videos as well, because those videos can just simply be the same information that you're presenting in the blog, but done in a video format. And we know that 72% of customers would rather learn about a product or service by way of video. It's something simple. It's something easy. And you can get a lot more information across than having somebody read it. So the best way is really to call in your team, right? And you don't have to get a professional, videographer and do all this other stuff. Video can be very simple, but understanding that it is still like that, planning the preparation, the presentation of it, and then the post follow-up. Really building videos on purpose is so that you have the intent behind what the video is supposed to do, present that information, and then follow up, right? Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them is a great formula to follow when you're doing videos, product demos, and things like that. Is ultimately always understand that it has to lead to something next. In the 22 years that I've been doing marketing, everything I do is always about telling people, the information, getting it to them, understanding what they want, and then telling them what they should be doing next. So using the latest technology is going to help you in your video pursuits, making sure that you have a strategy behind it, and honestly tap into the experts, because ultimately they're gonna have tested and tried and failed way more times than you, so that they can succeed. And that's one of the great parts about doing all of this is it's to the point of failure. It's if you're not pushing that line, if you're not trying new things, then you're not seeing what's going to work. And if you can continuously improve the process that you have, continuously improve the videos that you create, it's the only way to get better at something is to continuously do it over and over again, to learn what works, what doesn't work, and how you want to do it better, what engages people, and what moves them forward. So on to the part around virtual conferences and events. And just see if there's anything else in the chat. Casey, this is where we're going to go into a couple of the different ideas around virtual events and conferences. And again, like I said in the beginning, it's totally changed. It is no longer going to be these crazy events where you've got trade shows of hundreds of thousands of people walking through, and that's obviously South by Southwest on the left and just a regular corporate conference on the right. That can't happen anymore right now. And it's not looking good for this year. I think Google just came out with their statement yesterday that they're continuing the work from home policy that they're currently on and not bringing anyone back to the office until Q3 of 2021. And if we're just taking cues from larger organizations like that and seeing how far out they're pushing that, then I know travel and events and conferences and things like that are definitely heading the same way. So if your business or organization hosts an annual event, obviously the current circumstances, it's a challenge in getting all these people together. So how do you do it in a digital format? How do you actually take a traditional trade show or a conference and turn it into something virtual? Now, obviously, yes, we went through everything where the technology of Zoom, Cisco's WebEx, and GoToMeeting, you can do it that way. And it's just a little bit more difficult. There are other platforms where you can leverage the entire platform to build out all the videos, to build out the marketing pieces for it, the websites, to build out kind of the learning portals that'll go behind a full event show like this. And it takes all of those into consideration. So it can be, virtual events and conferences can be used for different purposes, whether it's lead generation, whether it's a monetization piece and you're getting monies from sponsors, from advertisers, from the booths that you typically sell. All of these different pieces can be turned into a virtual format so that you can move your virtual events and conferences forward. And a couple of different things happen here. So let's look at the stats. 93% of professionals plan to invest in virtual events moving forward. This is a very recent survey and study. 70% or 7 out of 10 respondents have moved their face-to-face events partially or fully to a virtual platform. Many people don't see this as a short-term fix. Like I said, Google is looking Q3 2021 of just bringing people back into the offices. So how do you actually do this? What I'm going to go through next is a few different stages of kind of the planning for an event and conference. And then we'll talk about some of the different technologies that we're looking at and how to do for different things. And we'll go from there. So the first part is the pre-show, right? This is the preparation side of it, right? Understanding what your goals are, the topics, the agenda, how the show flows, the speaker selection, the technology selection, monetization, the budget for it. Because these aren't cheap solutions. These aren't a simple thing. And it's sort of getting more complex like a website. It's not just, hey, let's just put on an event, we'll promote it, and we'll have people show up. It doesn't happen anymore. It just doesn't work like that. Being able to build these out with intent and understanding what's the audience experience going to be like? What's the speaker's experience going to be like? How much money are we going to make from this? In goal setting to ticket sales, to booth sales, to sponsorships, and being able to say, where can we go from here? Having the timeline in the events of, all right, what's the marketing that leads up to it? What happens during the show? How do all these things turn into it? The next piece we look at is the pre-show. Ultimately, that's the marketing, right? Putting that out on social media, collecting the emails, building out your email list and continuously promoting to them, getting them to help you promote it. The advertising, the press releases, partners and influencers who are also going to help you promote this. Then you've got the challenge of prepping your speakers, making sure that you go through the topics with them, making sure that you get all of their presentations beforehand. The audience registration process, collecting money, refunds. Then you got to worry about what's the follow-up, what's the email sequence that you're going to be sending on a weekly basis, on a daily basis leading up to the show. Then you've got to worry about technology integrations. Are you using Pathable? Are you using MemberClicks? There's so many other different platforms that you can be using, and it's all based on the pre-show and understanding what are the goals of the show, how are you going to do it, what's the layout of the show, because it is going to truly impact the technology that you choose and where things go. Then you got to think about the website, the email integration, the mobile app development. What other, how else do you actually get this information out there? Then we start talking about the actual show. Once we go live, then we're looking at tech checks. What's happening behind the scenes? Where are people going? The tech backups. How are people communicating? What's the user experience like? Are you keeping attendees engaged? How are you measuring that? Attendee interaction, breakout rooms for networking or for different speakers. There's a lot of different moving pieces that are happening to all of this. So it's a quick, that one day flies by, and ultimately it's all about the prep that goes along with it. Finally, post-show, right? The intellectual property. What happens to the presentations that you've done, right? You've recorded them. Now, who owns those? How do you upsell next year? How do you get those sales ahead of time so that you can start pre-selling your virtual event for the following year? How do you get access to the information? What's the attendee survey going out? How do you collect testimonials so that you can build it into your marketing going forward? As we start to look at all these different pieces, all the different segments that need to work in concert to make this an amazing show for your audience, ultimately all of it's got to come together at the same time. And if it's not organized, then it is much more difficult to keep that going. So there's a lot of information that we just covered throughout all of this with, virtual events, virtual trainings, and webinars. So as we start looking at this, I'm going to take a couple of questions. The next piece is just kind of the Q&A. So we'll look at what I really like calling this is really virtual webinars, trainings, and conferences. Oh my, because so much of it ties together. One of the questions that just came in is, what are the biggest challenges with webinars, events, and conferences? And I think, to me, it's really the planning process and understanding what it is you want out of it, aligning the marketing piece with it, the technology piece with it, and ultimately the user experience piece. Making sure that those are seamless, because certain events aren't going to need the massive conference or event type platforms. Other ones could just be a simple Zoom. Other ones could just be online training or virtual training. So a lot of it has to do with kind of depending on what your goals are, what you're trying to get out of it, and what you're trying to do with it. Another question, what are the best practices for length of a promo video? Does it differ depending on the medium it's used in? So when you start thinking about promo videos, it comes down to goals. It's what are you trying to do? What's the plan for it? What's the intent behind it? And ultimately, a video should be as long as it can be while it still engages the audience. And it's a difficult thing to understand, because it could be a 30-second video. It could be a minute-long video. I've seen other ones where I've been engaged for 3 hours because I was super into the topic and the presenter was fantastic. Ultimately, what you need to do is test and measure, is put out content that starts at 3 to 5 minutes. If people are engaged in it and they love it, then you can start producing longer videos. If they're not super engaged with it, you need to get your message across in a clearer fashion, in a way that speaks to them in a much shorter fashion. And it might be only 1 minute. So again, there's no set rules for this. Everybody seems to think shorter is better, and that's ultimately what a lot of the stats from YouTube are telling us, is that shorter videos are more engaging. And it comes down to how well you know your audience and how you can adapt as you go through. As I started in the beginning, this is really about changing and keeping up with your customers, your clients, and your audience to understand how are they consuming information, what do they want from it, and where do they go from there. Another question, what is the suggested time frame for a live video? Again, I hate to say it, but it depends. It is all based on your audience, what the typical person has, how much time they have when you're actually presenting a live video. If you look at podcasting kind of says that it should be between 17 to 22 minutes, because that's what the average commute is. If you're looking at suggested timeframes for a live video, it's probably a few minutes. It is not very long. The longer it goes, the more drop off you're going to have. So again, look at that 3 to 5 minute as probably your lengthiest. Probably what I've seen more often than not is that minute to a minute and a half has been our sweet spot in keeping somebody engaged and then moving them forward to do something. So ultimately, yeah, Joe, great suggestion, right? Make it as short as possible, grab their attention, and then get them to learn more on the website. Ultimately, that's what you want people to do. When you're talking about here's what you're going to learn, learn it, and now here's what you learned. Go, if you want more, learn more here. That being said, if you want to learn more, if you've got questions, if you want to take this further, if you want to talk about a virtual conference or event that you might be planning or you're thinking about having for your association, your business, or whether you're looking at webinars, virtual trainings, and the like, I invite you to come, ask a question. Shoot me an email directly, move through anything. Go to our website, hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Insta, YouTube. Check us out at CMA results for any of the different hashtags or our properties there, or hit cmasolutions.com. I'm available. I want to thank all of you for attending today. I want to stay closer to time as possible. I know we're at the 54-minute and 23-second mark. So if there are no other questions, I'm Dan Belowitz with CMA Solutions, signing off for today.